It's Pacific War by Victory Games. We are here playing through the Battle of the Coral Sea, and we've got the first significant aggression of the game with 3 American air units coming in to attack this hex here. They'd love to be able to attack this task force, but they can't because they don't have it detected. So, and in this phase, the air movement or the air mission phase, you can only detect moving air units, so they can't attempt to detect the force that they're striking. That would rather make a mockery of the whole detection thing. You just fly the air units anyway and then detect and then attack all in one go. You can't do that, but what they can attack are the ground units, which don't require detection. These are considered automatically detected, so that force 05 marker there is detected, and they are bombing that with bombers flying with air units flying from a number of separate airfields. So they've got these flying out of here, these bombers flying out of Australia over there, and these escorts flying out of this adjacent airfield at Port Moresby. So I've got to give them a coordination roll. Firstly, I think their lowest they're level 0, and level 0. That means that their coordination attempt is 3 times 0. This will not be a coordinated attack then. This will be an uncoordinated attack. And what we do first is roll for the Japanese to see if they detect the incoming flights. If they do, they've got some fighters on carriers there, which they might want to throw up as combat air patrol. So let's go through this. Let's give the Japanese, it's a daytime phase. We are searching for air units in our own hex. That's 0 through 5. So let's give them a roll. They get a 2, and so they can alert their air units. Fabulous. So over here we've got these in Task Force 4, which is in that hex. We've got these fighters. We've only got 2 steps of them, unfortunately, because it's a light carrier. It's got a launch capacity of 2. It's only got 2 steps of fighters. Let's just plonk them down here. And so they are going to fly cap and run some intercept, and the Americans are going to peel away these guys as escorts. So we're going to get air-to-air combat between these, which is simultaneous. These have lost 3 steps and therefore have an air-to-air value of 1, and the Japanese have lost 4 steps and so also have an air-to-air value of 1. So let's give them both a roll. I'll just roll the 2 dice. A 3 and a 4. I don't think that's going to do anything. No, it's not. So there's not going to be any casualties on either side. And we'll just return the Japanese aircraft to base. I won't return the Americans because they can now all run some attacks. Actually, as they're detected, they're going to get flak on the way in. Are they going to get flak? I don't think they're going to get flak because they're not attacking anything with flak values. They're not attacking ships. They're choosing their targets as the force, and the force has got an infantry regiment and a Marines battalion. Does this stuff have any anti-air capability, I wonder? Let's have a quick look. I think the answer is most likely to be no, but we will check the rulebook to see if it looks like the ground units have any sort of anti-air capability. Here's a ground unit. What can we see? Unit size, unit type, troop quality. Oh, there is an anti-air strength. There's a little number in there. Okay, let's check our guys then. That little number in there is 0 and 0. Okay, well, I think an anti-air strength of 0 still gives you a roll. I don't think it's X. I've got a feeling you get a roll on the 0 column here. So they need to roll 0, I think. I believe that's the case. Let's give them a roll then and see if they can luck out with some anti-aircraft fire. And they can't, they roll a 7. So it's all an irrelevance. That would have been, I'd have had to look up more tables to make sure I was doing that correctly. Okay, now we get to do some bombing then. So we do these individually. We don't sum the factors. We do each air unit individually. So this one has an air to ground of 5. This one has an air to ground of 4. And this one has an air to ground of, and these haven't taken any step losses, so they're full strength. This one has an air to ground of 2, I think, and it's taken 3 step losses, so it can't contribute. But we've got a 5 and a 4. So let's roll these. The 5 gets a 9, that's an awful result, that's no effect. And the 4 gets a 0, that's a really good result. So one awful roll and one good one. So the 0 here comes down here, and we are looking at air versus ground unit. Okay, and we've got T. What that means is a troop, I forget what it's called, it's like a troop quality check or a troop morale check or something like that. So we need to have, I think we probably need to have identified which unit we were attacking, which was going to be the infantry regiment rather than the Marines battalion. So the infantry regiment, we were attacking that. We got a T result on it. I'm sure that means some sort of troop quality check. And I think that's a D6, a D10 roll, as they all are, and they've got to get less than their troop quality number. And their troop quality number is the one on the left. So here we've got, this guy's got a troop quality of 6, he's got a troop quality of 7. So they've got to roll equal to or less than their troop quality, or they will be something broken, I think is the term the rules use. So they have got a 1 and passed that troop quality check, and the air attacks have not had any impact, and now these guys fly back to base. So this guy is going back to force 3. Let's pop him on to force 3. This guy is going back into force 1 there, and drop him back in, and the other guy here is part of force 2 back up over here, and we've done our air attacks and at least forced a troop quality check from the Japanese, even though it didn't end up having any effect. I'm going to check I've done all that correctly. I think I have, though, and then we're going to move on to a naval combat where some American cruisers are trying to run down this detected seaplane carrier here. So that's the next thing to do, and I'll come back with the steps for naval combat and illustrate that there. But let me just check I've done that air combat correctly, that sort of ground strike correctly. Okay, far as I can tell here in Pacific War, I've done everything fine in here. So now we've got a naval combat to conduct in here. It is daytime. We are in the dark blue open water, open ocean, and both sides have detected each other, and you use that combination of factors, detection, water type and lighting condition, to determine what sort of engagement you get and at what range, and whether anyone has surprise. And in this instance we are going to have 3 rounds of naval combat, with neither side having surprise starting at, and they are going to start at long range. So we will just pull the respective naval forces off onto this little display so that we can have a closer look at them. So we have two, on the American side, we have two heavy cruisers, the Kent and the Northampton, and on the Japanese side we have a CVS, a seaplane carrier, the Chitose. I don't think I've talked through what these are, but this little symbol here means that the unit has got seaplane search capability, which means it can use the spotter naval unit chart to determine to go looking for enemy units. And then on the left hand side, the black 0 is its anti-air strength, and the 4 on the right is its hit capacity before it is sunk, and the red 1 in the top right is its activation cost, which is used in the campaign game when you get command points to activate units and blah blah. We won't go into that because I don't know the rules, I just kind of understand some of the concepts. Over here then we have two heavy cruisers, the Northampton. It has got an anti-air of 2, it takes 5 hits, and the C means it is crippled on 4 hits, which has its own little effects, activation cost of 2. And the Kent, 1 anti-air, 5 hits, crippled on 4, and so on. Interesting that Northampton has seaplane search capability, which I hadn't been taking into account and using. So must remember that the Northampton can actually do naval searches. That's a super useful thing to know and utilise, and I haven't really been. So there we go. On the reverse of these is a matrix. I think I've shown before, but maybe not. Is a matrix of values or x's, and these show short, medium and long range. It shows your gunnery strength, which here we've got 0, not possible, not possible. Your torpedo strength at short, medium and long range, no torpedoes, no torpedoes, no torpedoes. Up to the top right is your bombardment value, this being a seaplane carrier, it does not have a bombardment value, and your anti-submarine factors, 1. So all in all, you can see this ship, the Chitose, as you might expect for a seaplane carrier, not terribly well armed for a fight against two heavy cruisers. Great. Over on this side, let's have a look at these two. I think we will see very similar values for these two heavy cruisers, and the Australian will be far easier to read owing to the white background. But there it is. Long range 1, medium 2, short 5, 1, 2, 5 down there as well. No torpedoes on the Northampton. A 0 torpedo factor on the Kent at short range. And then gun bombardment factors of 5 and 4, and no anti-submarine capability. So we're going to be at long range, and these two are going to have, I don't know whether they fire individually on the ones column or whether you sum them again, or whether you do them individually like you do with aircraft. I think it's most likely that you fire with them individually in naval combat, much like you do with aircraft. I'm probably going to do that if I can't find it very, very quickly. Yes, each naval unit fires individually at its target. So both are obviously going to fire at the Chitose here at long range, and they are therefore have 1 fire factor. And let's come to the charts. We can see naval gunnery, long range. They need a 0 or 1 to do anything at all. A 0 or 1. You can read from the chart over here that long range versus naval. 0 or 1's both doing 1 hit, and those are the only possible outcomes on when you've got one factor. So 0s or 1's to hit. I'll just roll 2 dice, doesn't matter that they're different colours. And we've got a 7 and a 2, so they've missed in Naval Combat round 1. The next thing that happens is that both sides get to bid for the range for round 2, and you cross-reference the bids, and all the combinations are here. You cross-reference the bids to end up with a new range for the next round, and then you get some more combat. Or if everyone wants to withdraw, presumably everyone can withdraw. But anyway, the Japanese are going to bid withdraw, and the Americans will bid short because they desperately want to close the range to short and use their 5 gunnery factors. The Japanese are going to bid withdraw, and what you're going to end up with is a long range gunnery duel in which the Japanese can't fire, but they can't fire anyway. So the trouble is, if at long range they bid anything other than that, and if they bid long and the Americans bid short, it's going to medium. And once it's at medium, if they bid long and the Americans bid short, it's going to short. So the Americans can close the range. So they've got to be bidding withdraw and trying to run away. Otherwise the range closes over the next 2 rounds and there's nothing they can do about it. But the price they pay is not being able to fire, and they can't fire anyway. So essentially what I'm going to do is 2 more long-range shots for naval combat rounds 2 or 3, and then the Japanese will get to withdraw. So that's what's going to happen here. Let's roll some fire for combat round 2, and we've got 2 6s, and for combat round 3 we've got an 8 and a 9. That was absolutely terrible gunnery, and the combat is over with no damage to the Chitose. It's escaped. They managed to steam away, obviously, and has disappeared after a lot of inaccurate gunnery. So okay, that is Task Force 2, and this is also Task Force 2. These are going back onto the displays. Well, that was an illustration of how naval combat works. Anyway, it was everything I've just illustrated has resulted in absolutely no effect whatsoever. However, it's all good fun, it's all good and worth it. So we are now moving into a bombardment segment, of which there won't be any. Ground combat, there won't be any, but we're going into disadvantage movement. And there will definitely be some of that. So let me see what the Japanese want to do. Okay, so Japanese troops have advanced through the jungle here and up the road to Port Moresby, so we'll be able to attack in the ground combat phase of the next battle cycle. And they've pulled their fleets back away from where they landed, and we've got this situation here. And now we've gone into the disadvantaged air mission phase, and with some carriers here and a target of some cruisers here that we've escaped from, we're going to throw our planes at them. So we've got this air mission. I've just put the planes over here, incoming into this hex with the Kent and the Northampton, is it? So the Americans get to make a detection roll to see if they can pick up the planes coming in. They get a 9, as you can see there. I missed the dice tray, but they've got to roll a 9, so they haven't got flak as they go in. There are no friendly aircraft for the Americans in the hex, so they don't get to scramble aircraft. So these two planes are now going to attack the Northampton cruiser, both of them, and they have got 8s minus the 2 step reductions on them, so they are on 6s, which is quite high attacks. So let's roll 2 dice. We're on the 6 column here, and as you can see, anything up to a 6 is going to do something. So let's roll both of these, and they've got a 0 and a 2, and that's 2 incredible rolls for the Japanese. Here we said they both attacked the Northampton, so they may sink it. The 0 on the 6 table come down here, and we're looking at one-engined air versus naval, so we're looking across here, and we're doing 4 hits, and then the 2 result comes down here, one-engined air versus naval, and that's 2 hits, and that's a total of 6 hits on the Northampton. The Northampton can take 5, and that's all she wrote for the Northampton, and she has just been sunk by an airstrike from the carriers. That's not very good, is it? So that's in the casualty box. I'll just stick it up over there as a casualty. I won't. Yeah, oh dear. Now the remaining Kent gets to fire anti-air. It's got 1 anti-air factor, and it's got a 4, which isn't going to do anything, I'm afraid. And the successful Japanese mission is headed back to the carriers. So that's that done. And that was all very successful for the Japanese, and you can see how dangerous that could have been if there'd been a carrier in there, because that could have just, put 6 hits into the Yorktown or something, and that would have been the end of that. So yeah, it can be brutal, as we've just seen with a couple of good dice rolls. Okay then, so that was the Japanese air mission phase. I don't think they've got any more air to do, so we are just moving the time track on another 2 days, and we are removing any detections, so anything that's detected becomes undetected again for the moment. Take all these off, and we are moving into a new battle cycle with the lighting and then the advantage determination. Now, one thing it's worth noting at this point is that you have to end a battle scenario with your naval ships back in port. So you have to make it back to port inside the time frame of the scenario, or the ships that don't are considered sunk. Now for the Japanese that's not too bad, because they've got a port here at Rabaul, which is close by, so it's probably only a turn or two, two turns away for these. So most of their, in fact all their naval units are within 2 turns of a port. But for the Americans, if they lose Port Moresby, then they're having to make it back up over here to Australia. And if you look at this task force, it's 1, 2, 3 turns away. If you look at this one, you have to stop in restricted waters, so that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 turns away, and 5 turns away, well, we do this turn, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 would take us up to day 18 out of 21. So they've got this turn and 1 more, and then they've got to be out of there if they're going to make it back to an Australian port. So the Americans don't have long to stick around in the area if Port Moresby falls. And there's doesn't seem to be a great deal about preventing Port Moresby from falling that they can do. What they really need to do is nail a Japanese carrier, which is one of their main objectives, either a Japanese carrier or a Japanese light carrier. And they know there's a light carrier in here and they'd really like to sink it. They'd really like to sink it. So that has to be top of the American agenda right now, given that they could easily lose Port Moresby in a minute. I don't know how ground combat works, I don't know how deadly it's going to be, and I don't really know, haven't taken a hard look at the Australians that are defending it. They might be really tough and the ground combat might be really hard on the Japanese, but who knows. Anyway, let's have a look then at the lighting, because we're going to go into a random lighting roll. This could play havoc with decision making. It's an 8, which is day PM, so it's standard. And now the Japanese are looking at the situation here. You know what the Japanese are thinking is that this must be the American carrier group, because we know that this is cruisers. If we now run away from them, then they won't be able to sink any carriers of ours. And what that means is, let's shift the light conditions to forward to night, and then that means that an American win in the initiative won't allow them to come forward and throw planes at our light carrier here. So that's what they're going to do. The initiative is an 8-6, so it is an American initiative, but the Americans have the advantage, but at night now they're not going to be able to fly air missions to use it, and that's all going to be a bit annoying for them. So I've got to figure out now what I can do as the Americans, if anything. Okay, I'm just going to drop in here and talk a little bit about this track. So I've done this thing where we had the lighting condition marker in here in day AM, and when we move it forward, I'm not sure. I'm not sure when the Japanese player has to make the decision to use his once per operation option to move it forward 2 spaces. See, any time the lighting condition marker goes into the random determination box, you have to do random determination. So if it's here, the Japanese player can't go 1-2 and automatically make it day PM. What happens is that it goes in here and stops, and you get a random roll. Because it says quite clearly, any time the lighting condition marker enters the random determination portion of the lighting condition display, even if the operation player uses his option to place it there, immediately roll the die and place the marker in the portion specified by the die roll. But it says even if the operation player uses his option to place it there, which suggests that actually it can roll through here into the day PM if the Japanese player wants to, because that would move it forward 2 past the random determination spot. It's only if it ends there. So if we were in night and you moved it forward 2, you'd end up in random determination. But here it looks like the Japanese player can bump it forward 2. And if they don't exercise that option, then it goes forward 1, and you get the random roll, which in this case gave us day PM. I don't think, therefore, I was proposing, which was that we come forward here, roll, get the round and roll, and then choose to bump it forward to, is legal. I think we either bump it forward to and end up here, or we end up in here and we roll and we end up in here, but I don't think we can end up at another knight phase. Not without rolling knight, you know. So I think I've just misused that, and I'm going to take that back, and we're going to go into a day PM turn, because I don't think it's correct that the Japanese player can let the marker move forward 1 and then see what gets rolled and then choose to exercise their right. I think either they bump it forward 2 or it moves forward 1. Because it does say if the operation player wants to, they can move it forward 2. If they've used their option or choose not to use it, it moves forward 1. So it's clearly sequenced like that. So yeah, I just wanted to make that clear. And the reason that's important is because when we go back over here, the Americans have just won the initiative. There's a light carrier in here that they really desperately want to sink. And with the initiative and a day phase, they've got chances to get some sort of detection on this task force, and then bring their carriers in and fly a mission in. And that, you know, they really do want to do that a great deal. So this sort of cheat with the lighting condition that I'd sort of, and deliberately cheated, but I just misread that sequencing. The critical thing I've missed was the idea that this lighting condition marker could move through here. I thought it said that whenever it hit here, then you made the random roll, but it's not true. It says whenever it lands in here, very specifically exactly in here, which suggests it can move through. And at that point I reassessed how this worked. So yeah, we're going to go into another battle cycle. We've got American advantage, and they are looking at searches and how best to proceed. But as I've just said, how best to proceed is by attempting to sink a light carrier in here, and that would tick a big hefty box on their list of objectives. So that's what they're up to.